Hi, welcome back to this channel. This is a continuation of the previous video. So here I'll discuss how unemployment affects your politics. Please do not watch this video before watching the previous one. My name is Susan Wanjiku. I'm the founder of wanjikuseyeke, and here I discuss the relationship between economic development and governance so that you can understand, engage, and influence the matters that affect you and I. Welcome to wanjikuseyeke. Now let's get right into it. Now I define politics as the battle for how the country should be run, or the battle for ideas on how people and resources should be governed, controlled, or managed in a country. So resources are like taxes, information, our country's natural resources, etc. So just a quick recap of my last video, because I know some people will watch this before that one. I said that when there is high unemployment in a country, the government becomes the safest place to get employed. And unfortunately, that opens the door for very questionable characters to get into government, and mostly for all the wrong reasons. Now, when that happens, your government becomes compromised. And when your government is compromised, because they are the ones responsible for making decisions on behalf of your country, the economy is at stake. So they're the ones making the laws, the regulations, and the policies that influence and affect business activity. And a good example of this, if you don't know what I'm talking about, is there's taxes, there's licenses, there's regulations, there's deciding what will be imported or exported, how much the government will borrow, etc. So if your economy is compromised because you have poor leadership or bad governance, what happens? You end up with more unemployment. And that's the cycle that Kenya has found itself in since independence. So what about the politics? In my last video, I gave an example and said that if the president grabbed land, we wouldn't see the DCI going in to arrest the president. Why is that the case? When a government is formed, mainly formed out of favors of bribery, or because someone is loyal to their political party, or because of tribe or friendship or any other relationship, then it becomes very difficult to hold the person who gave you a job accountable. And this is especially when the case when it's senior government positions that are given as a gift. So public officials can't exercise their personal responsibility at their jobs, and orders from above become the norm. Ama mtoto wa mkubwa amesema. Imagine you're a government employee and you receive orders from above from some person to do something illegal, like processing fraudulent invoices. So when such a system exists where a powerful person can just give orders, it becomes very easy to maintain an oppressive and repressive country. Like in the government of Jomo Kenyatta and Moi, and even in the last 10 years, the police were given a lot of power to harass and arrest and jail or assassinate the people who called out the government and the people who fought for the freedoms and rights that we enjoy today. So such a system can only be maintained by fear, and also by the fact that people do not have economic freedom. Now, according to the Kenyan Constitution, Parliament, that's the MPs and senators, are supposed to keep the executive in check and hold them accountable. Executive, that's the president and his cabinet. So whenever the president or the cabinet as a whole abuse their powers, Parliament is supposed to come in and hold them accountable and take the necessary action. And that's why the boundary between the powers of the president and the powers of Parliament have to be very clear, and they have to be separated. That boundary has to be very clear. We also have the 2010 Constitution, the laws, Parliament, Office of the Controller of Budget, Salaries and Remuneration Commission, National Intelligence Service, EACC, Directorate of Criminal Investigations, Financial Reporting Center, and the judiciary, and many others. But you should ask yourself that since we have all these institutions that are kept there so that our economy is intact, why is it so difficult to tame all forms of corruption and economic crimes just once and for all? So it's because the same people who are mandated to protect our economy are the same ones who are responsible for destroying it, or they are facilitating, protecting, and covering up for the people who are destroying it. Number 2, unemployment interferes with your ability to exercise your civic duties and to participate in political processes. And I've observed that this happens in 4 ways. So the first one is where the bad government is very direct and intentional about maintaining a repressive state. So they restrain your political and economic freedom. So serikali tu inawanyanyasa. Because why? I told you unemployment robs you of choice. Now, I've also repeatedly stated that if unemployment has persisted for years, and by years I mean decades, then you'll probably find a bad government or poor governance and an economy that's been run down and not performing above its potential. So by bad government, I mean a government that only seeks to benefit the people running it. But to maintain this state of affairs where a bad government uses its powers just to benefit a few people, they use instruments of power, be it the legal and justice system like the police and the courts, or the laws and the regulations and other public institutions in their own favor. And to maintain this state of affairs, they need to suppress people. Like, let me give an example during Moi's time. So during Moi's time, there was a law that made it illegal to have a gathering of more than, I think, 10 people. And it's because during that time, Kenyans had begun getting an awakening that they deserved better. And it was through those gatherings that they exchanged ideas and discussed the affairs of the country. And because at that time, poverty was high, so was unemployment, illiteracy, and corruption. So in terms of politics, elections were rigged. They had to fight to have more than one political party. Freedom of speech or freedom of association and assembly were a rumor. They didn't have the freedom to drive a whole president out of Twitter. And now, because there had also been 2 attempts to overturn Moi's government, Moi became paranoid and suspicious. So anyone who attempted to have a gathering that seemed to be politically motivated was arrested, detained, harassed, kidnapped, and sometimes assassinated. So all state machinery were geared towards repressing and suppressing people from speaking out, because people wanted a better Kenya, whether economically, socially, and politically. So change always begins with an awakening and enlightenment. And also during the Jubilee administration, there was a rise in enforced disappearances and abduction, and Subaru Yamambaru were really thriving. They were having a field day. Then the Jubilee administration were also having a field day with deception and character assassination, especially on social media. So that's a form of suppression. Then the second way that unemployment interferes with participation in political processes is because people are too preoccupied and distracted by trying to survive in a tough economy. So people have no time to hold leaders accountable or to exercise political rights or keep up with what's happening, or to go and demonstrate peacefully or to present petitions or to attend public participation forums. Because remember, the system that maintains unemployment has existed for decades. So people lose hope that even if they participate, nothing is going to change. Then the third way that unemployment interferes with your political rights is fear. So some people ask themselves, if I get arrested while I'm out protesting, who is going to bail me out? I have more to lose if I'm out in the streets. If I get injured while protesting, I have more to lose because I can't afford to pay hospital bills. I even know some people can't share this channel because they fear some of the things that I'm talking about. The fourth way is through suppression, And this is a strategy used to influence the outcome of an election. Like in the 2022 election, there was a low voter turnout for two main reasons. Voter suppression by design, which was through making sure you don't give all the adequate and necessary information on time so that people make informed decisions, and also by making sure that people do not register as voters. And also, some people just chose not to vote because what's the point of voting if we're still going to be recycling the same set of leaders that got us into this position as a country in the first place? So that's what some Kenyans were asking themselves. Others were asking, why should I waste my time going to queue, yet the election will be rigged? Whatever your reason for not participating in political and governance processes, what we do by doing that is just strengthening bad governance. Now, government cannot hold itself accountable without the players who are outside government, so it's your civic responsibility. For example, let's look at Esther Kazungu versus Nyayo House. Nyayo House is the government immigration department. So for those who don't know, Esther Kazungu is an influencer and social media content creator who used her Twitter account to expose the inefficiencies in Nyayo House, where passports are processed and issued from. She put up a post on Twitter exposing that she, just like hundreds of thousands of other Kenyans, had been waiting for their passports for months, something that should be ready ideally within a month. And so it sparked a debate on Twitter because some people were of the opinion that she should have just paid a bribe so that she could get her passport in good time, which is just a sad situation. So it caught the attention of the media and the cabinet secretary of the Ministry of Interior, CS Kindiki. So after the expose, they managed to print 100,000 passports in just 3 days, and they arrested 4 people who are believed to be responsible for demanding bribes so that the passports could be processed. But I'm sure that those 4 people are just part of a larger group. And by the way, this whole time, the ministry had also been giving the excuse that they couldn't print the passports because the printer apparently had broken down. Now, you want to tell me that all that needed to happen for things to get moving was a Twitter post. And imagine, some people needed those passports desperately so that they could find employment abroad, because there's a lot of labor export going on currently. So that was very unfortunate. So unemployment interferes with your civic duty and political participation through suppression, repression, fear, and being too preoccupied with surviving. So all these maintain and perpetuate the cycle of poor governance and an underperforming economy, which leads to more unemployment. Now, another cost of unemployment is that politicians exploit jobless people to do their dirty work, and especially that becomes the case when it comes to personality cults. My previous point was touching on the people in a struggling economy being discouraged from carrying out their civic duties and participating in political processes. But in this one, I'm now talking about how unemployed people are manipulated and exploited by politicians to engage in political processes for their personal gain. So a good example of this was during the post-election violence of 2007. So when I read the reports, they said that the violence was not spontaneous, it was carefully planned, funded, and targeted, all with the aim to get power at whatever cost. And we saw what that did to the country. Not only did people lose their lives, but we also got a bonus of Uhuru and Ruto as president and deputy, because they were trying to defeat the ICC case. And like I keep saying, how did that work for us? And finally, economic problems that persist for years give rise to tyrants and populists. So a tyrant is defined as a cruel and oppressive leader, and a populist is a politician who strives to appeal to ordinary people who feel their concerns are disregarded by established elite groups. So in short, when you're unemployed or struggling as an economy, people become very vulnerable and they desperately need a leader who will come up and change the situation in the economy quickly. So at that point, people believe anyone and anything. And that's how Germany ended up with Hitler, and the world ended up with World War II. So people lost their jobs in Germany and they struggled to get other jobs. There's a high cost of living, hyperinflation, the currency lost value at an extremely fast rate, and it became impossible to do business. But I find it very hard to imagine that the Germans were convinced that certain groups of people were responsible for the economic problems and therefore they deserve to die, like the Jews or people with disabilities. So people were vulnerable. And another example, that's why Ruto was popular for his Hustler Fund and Raila was popular for promising a stipend of 6,000 Kenya shillings monthly. They both took advantage of people's desperation. And by the way, there's nothing particularly wrong about populism, but it's that people never stop and ask what are the real consequences of what the politician is proposing, or is it even viable, or it's just a political statement so that they can get votes. Then that's probably also how Kenya ended up with Kenyatta after independence. So like Kenyans in the 60s thought that after Kenya got its independence, they would get their freedom. But instead they got a second round of colonization from their fellow people who decided to benefit from the oppressive and exploitative system that was created by our colonizers. But for them, they took it to a whole new level. Just go and watch the Real Mheshimiwa series. Always remember that you cannot separate politics from the economics and the economics from the politics. Even before the colonizers managed to have a full grip of the country, among the first things that they did was they took away people's economic activities. So they took their land so that they couldn't farm, they took their livestock, and in some cases they took their wives. Then they rearranged the economy to make it a money economy, which would work for the white man and the collaborators. Then now they enslaved people from there. And that's because you cannot enslave people who are independent and people who are not in survival mode. So in a nutshell, in countries where there's high unemployment, you'll also find that the government behaves badly, like I keep saying. It's not an accountable government, they're not transparent, and democracy is just a facade. So bad economies don't just happen, they're made that way. And it's the same thing about good economies, intentionality. So if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to share this video, leave a comment down below. Teach us something new. So as always, thank you so much for watching. If you can relate to this unemployment series, please share and please leave a comment. Unemployment is currently a trending topic. So yeah, please leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you. So as always, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Cheers.